Miss. Coma opens her eyes to hear this voice again and again. In a blurry vision, she sees a little girl who is telling her that it's already morning. As she wakes up, her vision gets clear and she analyzes her surroundings and finds herself lying on a bed inside a wooden inn. The little girl greets her good morning. She gets up and stretches herself and gets shocked by seeing her body being able to move. The little girl gets worried, but she ensures that everything is fine and gives her a candy out of her items as a kind gesture. She tells her to have breakfast downstairs and goes out of the room. Coma suddenly realizes that there's a digital item box appearing in front of her, which makes her pinch herself to see if it's really the reality. When she taps on it, a mirror appears and she assesses herself and finds out that her body has turned into a VR game character named High Elf in the game named Leadale that she used to play a lot. She figures out that she is inside that game, but her thoughts get disturbed by the growling of her empty stomach. She goes downstairs and sees a chubby innkeeper and the girl from earlier calling her to eat her bread and soup. She sits on the chair and is cheerful about eating after such a long time. She becomes even more delighted upon eating the bread with soup. After having a bellyful, she ponders where she could be, remembering that there was a village between the lands of the White Kingdom of Fels and the Green Kingdom of Grayscalo. She also notices that the village was prosperous due to it being in the center of a trade route, but now it's all empty. She asks the innkeeper why it's empty, and she then learns from the innkeeper that 200 years ago the village was cheerful before the merging of the two kingdoms that formed the Felscalo kingdom. Upon hearing the name Felscalo, she realizes that this world is not exactly the same as her game. The innkeeper then explains the backstory of how the seven kingdoms merged into three due to gods by pointing at colorful paintings on the wall behind her. Coma realizes that she is in the same game, but she has jumped 200 years in the future. The innkeeper then introduces herself as Morel, and the little girl is her daughter Lit. Coma then introduces herself to them and tries to pay with a pile of silver coins, but is warned not to show off the money, as 4 coins are enough to spend 10 nights there. So Coma pays Morella to stay there. She is back in her room and reviews her stats, and summons her AI supporter key, which informs her that the power outage at the hospital after she went to sleep caused her to lose her life. She figures out that, due to all this, her mind must have escaped inside the game. She looks out the window and gets shocked at the turning of the day quickly into the night. She quickly closes the window and figures out her next steps. She decides to head towards her base of operation, the Silver Tower, to see if there are other players living there as well and gathers some information. She tries to do magic and lights the lantern, which startles Lit, who is standing at the door with a lantern in her hand. She figures out that it is because she has never seen magic before. Lit informs her about the dinner. The inn is full of people cheering and enjoying their dinner. Coma arrives for dinner with Lit, and later gets introduced by Morel's eldest daughter, Luine. She enjoys dinner with other town folks and, on finishing her meal, Luine asks her about her plans for the future. Coma responds that she plans on finding her silver tower. Her reply shocks everyone, and the innkeeper admonishes her from going there as the Silver Ring Witch is there. It embarrasses Coma because, in her dark past, she was the Silver Ring Witch and stomped on many other players. She hurriedly retreats back to her room and is disheartened by her reputation. Then she figures out that if her dark history made it 200 years into the future, then there's a hope of finding other players there too. During the night, 2 thieves break into Coma's room and attempt to steal her coins, but due to Key being alerted to their presence, it summons a lightning lion to scare them away from her. The next morning, Coma opens her window and breathes fresh air while watching the scene of a beautiful green valley. In an instant, she spots the Silver Tower and decides to head toward it quickly. She makes a lame excuse for finding the herbs near the tower from Morel and Lit, and promises Lit to return with a gift for her. As a parting gift, Lit gives her a pouch of water. Out of sight of all onlookers, Coma puts on the ring from the tower and then teleports to the Silver Tower. At the top of the tower, the guardian golem reprimands her for leaving her there for 200 years, then informs her of what has happened in her absence. As it happened, 60 years ago, Scargo, her eldest son, visited the place hoping to find her. Coma then recalls that she created Skark and his younger siblings through the in-game foster system. Before she leaves, Coma restores MP to her tower's golem, and it asks her to check the other towers as well. Later, she realizes that she didn't leave anything in the village to save that location, and now she has to move on foot. She uses her magic to run faster, and on her way back to the village, she hears some screams. Then she looks closely and finds out a man named Lauder has been attacked by a horned bear. She attacks the horned bear and saves him from that monster, and they introduce themselves to each other. At night, the whole village celebrates by roasting the horned bear. Morel and her daughters are excited to hear all about Coma's adventure and how she captured the horned bear. Lauder offers Coma a glass of wine, and Coma, having the chance of drinking it for the first time, finds it delicious and gets drunk on wine and later passes out. Meryl and Lit take her to bed and take care of her while laughing at her silly behavior. In the morning, Coma gets awoken by Lit, but she still suffers from the hangover, and it annoys her so much that she promises herself not to drink alcohol again. They both get startled by the shouting of townsfolk. They come out to see the townsfolk gathering around an injured man, who is Kennison, lying on the ground. On Kana's inquiry, she learns that this man is one of the mercenaries who protect the merchants, and their caravan gets attacked by a group of ogres on their way back to the village. Kana quickly analyzes her with her AI key help, and finds out that he is poisoned. She moves everyone aside, sits beside Kennison, and casts a poison squelching and healing magic. Everyone is looking at her with fascination and with their eyes wide open. He gets recovered instantly, and it makes everyone happy. The leader of the mercenaries thanks her for saving his life, and Kana, being an ever humble person, takes no credit for it. Eline introduces himself as the caravan leader and offers his gratitude to Kana. Back in the inn, Kana informs them about her story and asks Eline if he knows anything about an elf priest named Scargo. Everyone gets shocked at this, because Scargo is their living legend who now is the priest's leader, and he is like a king there. Kana is glad to hear about Scargo and how he is doing so well. They ask Kana about how she knows about him, and they all act as if they have got a heart attack on finding out that she is his mother, and not only his, but she also has 2 more children. Suddenly, out of the way, Kana requests Eline to ride to the capital with his caravan. He accepts her request, but notices that Lit is standing behind her with tears in her eyes. Outside of the inn, Kana makes a promise to Lit that she will return one day, and gives her a star pin as a token to have faith in her promise. She asks Lit about the Silver Tower and tells her that she is the evil witch who lives there. Although Lit doesn't believe that she is a bad person, Kana asks her not to tell anyone, and in return, she will visit her often. Lit makes an agreement with her and becomes joyful again. After this, Arbiter introduces himself as the leader of the Flaming Spears mercenary group, and he will lead her to the capital with his group. The person she helped, named Kennison, looks nervous, thanks her politely, and stutters her name when speaking to her. Everyone bids them farewell, and their journey to the capital begins. They reach the capital of Felscalo, and Kana is astonished to see the progress the capital has made. Eline tells her more about it, that this capital is the one referred to in songs as the Scenic City. Arbiter offers her all his help if she ever needs it, which Kana graciously accepts. Afterwards, she checks into the inn which Eline refers to, but the bear innkeeper gives her a ferocious look, at which she tells her that Eline refers to this place to her, and she becomes suddenly polite. The innkeeper explains to her the reason for her rudeness is that she doesn't welcome humans because they don't like their kind, at which Kana clarifies that she is also not a human but an elf. She goes to the church where she can find Scargo, but she finds out from a girl outside the church that in order to meet him she needs to make an appointment first. Then she decides to move toward the Adventurers Guild instead. Afterward, the voice of an old man shouting at other men intrigues her, and she moves inside a shipyard where Kardats is at, Kana's son. They both look awkwardly at each other for a moment, and then Kana breaks the ice by calling him by his name. Kardats calls her mama, which seems a little weird to Kana as she has never heard it from anyone before. She pats him on his head, which makes him blush because he has maintained his tough personality in front of other men. And to hide this feeling, he gets angry at her and says that he isn't some whippersnapper to pat. Kana finds him very cute when he gets angry. Later, Kardats is told by his mother that she has appeared after 200 years, and the reason why she couldn't meet her children. She also learns from Kardats that her daughter Mai is the headmaster of the local academy, and its building is in front of them. Afterward, Kana registers herself at the Adventurers Guild, and finds a quest pasted on the wall. She immediately accepts this quest, which requests a potion. Hence she already has this potion in her stock. She turns it in, completes the guild, and receives 2 coins for it. As she steps out of there, she gets stopped by a man wearing armor who introduces himself as Agata and also introduces a little girl hiding behind him as Lonti. Agata finds Kana, a skilled adventurer, and makes a deal with her on his quest to find a missing boy, and later leaves Lonti with her to guide her about their target. Lonnie seems to be a shy and frail person who introduces herself as a student at the Royal Academy and an adventurer for 1 year. On finding out about Kana, Lonti is surprised about an elven royalty working as an adventurer, but Kana tells her that the rules aren't the same for everyone. Lonti explains the features of the boy as red hair, and he is younger than her. Without wasting any time, Kana takes her to a place where she thinks she can find him, and as they reach the place, which seems to be a narrow street with clothes hanging on ropes above their heads, they get startled by the noises of a crowd looking above at a boy with red hair trying to catch a kitten lurking on the clothesline. In trying to catch the kitten, the boy slips, but Kana quickly uses her floating spell to save the boy from falling. This is the boy they were looking for, which turns out to be a prince. The boy then reunites with his 2 friends and runs away as soon as he finds out that Lonti is looking for him. He uses the kitten as an escape from Lonti. This leads to Kana chasing after the boy across the river, making a huge scene. She captures the boy and returns him to Agata, who rewards her with a heavy price, which includes 50% of the bet he placed on her while she was trying to catch the boy. The boy gets quite angry and annoyed and shouts at them, but Agata carries him on his shoulder and bids farewell to Kana. Later in the night, Kana returns to the inn and is welcomed by the innkeeper offering her a glass of wine. The innkeeper is overjoyed by the tales of the spectacle she put on the river before, as she heard from the patrons. Coma is so warmly congratulated by patrons in the inn that, out of their respect, she couldn't deny the wine they offered and drink it all. On the other hand, Mai, Scargo, and Kardats are having dinner together while Kardats is informing them about their mother's arrival. They are all delighted to know about her, and Scargo gets overexcited and thinks about welcoming her with all his grace. Meanwhile, Mai has received a portion from one of her husband's students, and she figures out that this potion must be her mother's doing. In the morning, Coma wakes up and experiences a hangover headache again, and vows to not drink alcohol ever again. As she comes out to roam around, she is called out by some of the townsfolk as the lady who crossed the river. She doesn't seem to like to be called that. Later on, Coma visits both Aline and Arbiter. Aline teases Coma by saying the same line as the townsfolk, much to her dismay. Arbiter asks her if she has some other plans in her mind for the future, and she tells the two of them that she wants to know about other towers like the Silver Tower. Aline takes a pause to think, and then tells her about one located in a lake up north in Helshper, but people say that nobody can enter that. With all this information in mind, she requests the two to be on the lookout for any information about other towers. Later, at the Adventurers Guild, Coma receives a summons from the Royal Academy, to which Coma thinks that through this she might get a chance to finally see Mai and happily accepts it. At the academy, Coma is escorted by Lonti to Mai's office, and on their way, she can't stop praising Coma for her bravery. Once they enter the office, Mai calls her mother and immediately welcomes her with hugs, and gets emotional while embracing her mother. Coma pinches Mai so she could release her from her strong grasp. Watching this, Lonti becomes shocked that she's the mother of her administrator, Mai. Coma snaps her out of her shock and orders Mai to not behave like a silly girl when she is in the position of an administrator. After Mai excuses Lonti from her office, she introduces Coma to Lopus Harvey, Mai's husband, and the professor of alchemy at the academy. It's hard for him to believe that Coma is Mai's mother, but he eventually accepts this fact. After formally meeting with each other, he explains the reason why he summoned her. It is because of his curiosity about the potion which she submitted for the Adventurers Guild quest. He tells her that this potion was submitted by one of his students who got it from Coma. Lopus explains that this potion is an artifact-level potion created by a method that doesn't exist now. They ask Coma to give a demonstration about making this potion to their class. She enters the class and quickly makes a potion again out of her magic, which makes everyone shocked, excluding Mai. Coma immediately leaves the class after this, and goes out to find her new adventure quest. Afterward, at the Adventurers Guild, Coma accepts a quest to capture a ghost at a haunted coliseum for an 8 coins reward, and learns further about the quest from the guild receptionist. The receptionist tries to warn her that other adventurers have also tried it and failed, but she is pretty sure about doing it. She then visits the Colosseum, unaware of an uninvited guest, the little red-haired boy she captured earlier, following her trail. She enters the Colosseum and talks with its keeper to stay there for 2 to 3 days to capture the ghost. She asks the key about this Colosseum's history and then pulls out an eternal flame blade from her item box. She then summons a 3-faced dog, Cerebus, to patrol the area. She starts a campfire to prepare her food, and while she starts a campfire and cooks some meat, and as she is about to eat it, Sirius captures the boy and brings him to her. Coma invites him and he enjoys eating meat with her. Primo explains that he was following her to find out her true identity, and he thinks about walking on the river, her relation to Scargo, Mai, and Kardats, and how Lonti respects her relationship. All these things aren't normal. Coma understands his curiosity and puts Sirius in charge of keeping an eye on him. By nightfall, Coma's wait for the ghost is over and it finally appears. When the ghost appears, Sirius doesn't seem to notice it, and then Coma's guardian ring starts to illuminate. She then realizes that this place is actually a guardian tower, and the ghost isn't the actual ghost. Coma uses her ring to transport herself to a tower. Within the tower, she appears in a small dome-shaped room, and in its center there's a wilted tree planted on a pedestal. Coma feels pity for the tree and revitalizes it with her magic points, which lightens up the whole room, and changes the walls to a sunny day. The ghost appears in front of Coma in its true form as the guardian of this tower. He greets her and then informs her about this tower's number and about its owner, Kyotero. Upon asking Coma's name, she introduces herself and asks about the tower's previous owner, Kyotero. The Guardian states that he hasn't returned yet, and before he leaves he says that his dream is over. The Guardian is hence waiting for 200 years for him to come back. Furthermore, he tells her that there was only 12 skill masters left, but Coma remembers them to be 13. A sudden realization hit Coma that she wasn't included because she lost the battle of her life in the real world. She also understands the fact that the Ledale online game service most likely ended after she passed away, and as she's in the future, all of the other game players must have left. Then, Guardian explains to her about his haunting the Colosseum as a way of getting the attention of another Guardian ring which he sensed a few days ago. With that, the guardian bestows her the ring to its tower and announces her its new master. Coma orders him not to bother the people who use the Colosseum anymore, and she tells him that she'll visit him after a while. Meanwhile, the escorts find their young master. Coma is in the agony of being the last player left in the game. She stays all day in her bed and doesn't come out for 2 days. Upon hearing from Agata that she hasn't left her room for the past 2 days, a frantic Scargo, being the mama's boy, rushes to his mother's aid. When Coma meets him, she finds him really weird and annoying and throws a punch at his face from below, and he gets stuck into the ceiling. Coma casts an isolation barrier around herself and goes inside her blanket again. Mai then arrives and, with the help of her subordinates, takes Scargo out of there. Cardats, Mai, and Scargo meet together in Scargo's office in a pensive and anxious mood. They discuss matters concerning their mother, Coma's isolation and the barrier. During this conversation, Scargo realizes why she hit him because she found his appearance pathetic. Therefore, Scargo changes his attire to a primal white attire, and hopes to meet his mother to make up for his previous mistake. As Mai grows increasingly irritated by him, Cardats leaves the room to allow Mai to beat up Scargo and decides to visit his mother. On his way, Cardats finds her eating some skewered meat at a stall and shows his concern about her well-being. Later, the two sit on a bench and talk. Coma tells him that Scargo broke into her room last night, and that he should change his personality. She thinks that Scargo needs to be punished and scolded, but Cardats discourages the idea due to his position as a high priest, and the work he has done for his people. He makes Coma realize her misjudgment, and she apologizes to Cardats for leaving them in foster care in the first place. Afterward, they too visit Scargo and Mai, who are still fighting, and Coma comes up with an idea to stop them with an explosive potion. Once the two settle down, Coma sits in front of them and apologizes to both Mai and Scargo. It makes them pretty nervous as they have never expected such behavior from her. Coma continues her apology, admitting her failure as a parent, and her children apologize to her in return. Later, Coma says she has something to discuss with Scargo and Mai with fire in her eyes. Sensing this situation, Cardats quickly exits the scene and Coma reprimands them for their fight from earlier, and forbids them to use excessive magic for their own means. Afterward, at the inn, Aline visits Coma to inform her that his caravan has stores in the northern part of the country, Helspur. To reach Helspur, they need to cross a huge river and face so many dangers on their way. Aline offers to hire her as a bodyguard for this trip because of the dangerous journey one must take to reach one's destination. The biggest challenge is to fight bandits who are apparently attacking people along the route after taking refuge in a nearby ruin. Since Coma doesn't have much to do in her life right now, she decides to go with them. On the day of her trip, Mai, Cardats, and Lonnie see her off while Scargo was unable to come because of an important meeting he had to attend. Coma thinks it would be better if he couldn't come because she is sure that he would make a big scene with her. Before she leaves, Mai asks her mother to deliver a message for her to someone named Karik. He is the owner of the shop that Sakaya runs in Helspur. They start off their journey, and on their way to their destination, they reach the Ajid River, where the bridge that helped cross it was broken due to a flood. So, they all look up to Coma to help them. Instead of using a levitation spell, Coma uses a spell that allows the caravans to cross the river. However, in the middle of the river, she is attacked by a monster and one of the caravan's horses is lost in the process. It also scares Coma as she reaches the shore. Lacking another horse to pull the chariot, Coma summons her familiars Centaur and Sirius. On one hand, the horsemen and the caravans refuse to allow the two to help pull the wagons, because they would frighten the other horses. On the other hand, both Centaur and Sirius also like to be pack horses rather than cart pullers. So Coma summons a crimson pig named Lil P to pull the car and they continue forward. Along their way, the key warns Coma of some danger. Before she reaches the checkpoint, they see a man in a black cloak with a magic wand in his hand. He appears to be the head of the bandits they heard about. The caravan is ambushed by bandits. Coma sends Sirius and Centaur to get the other bandits hiding in the jungle. Sirius named Cerberwolf and the Centaur named Heigl vigorously deal with most of the bandits. Upon seeing himself losing, the main bandit attacks Coma with a huge magical fireball. But his efforts go in vain, and he manages to deflect it and fires back with an ice arrow that freezes him into ice, and then this ice breaks into many tiny pieces. Despite the bandit being the bad guy, Coma still feels guilty about eliminating someone for the first time. Coma and the others are camping somewhere and are sitting around a campfire talking about their encounter with the bandits. Coma also evaluates the staff and finds that she can cast 7 more spells and should sell them for a net profit. However, Aline wants nothing to do with it and would rather give it to Arbiter, who shares Aline's opinion. Coma then offers to create a new one with 30 shots, but the two of them decline. The others laugh about having Coma on their side, otherwise things would be very deadly for them. Coma is full of passion, and has a positive approach toward life as always. Arriving at the royal capital, Helspur, Coma admires the windmills in the capital. Aline tells her that this city is also called the City of Windmills and learns more about the windmill, and its functions that help supply the city with water. Another thing Coma notices is an Eastern-style castle in the city, which is how the city is a mixture of two different cultures. The two then head to Sakea's shop and Aline is surprised that she knows nothing about Kirik. However, Coma says that she is only supposed to deliver the letter. This prompts Aline to say that she's the first person he's met who doesn't know Kirik, and goes on to explain his famed merchant. Coma concludes that he is the head of a general trading company, and Aline states that his caravan often relies on this company. In Sakea, the first thing that Coma notices is the East meeting West style culture of the store, because of its roof which she finds very unique. They are then greeted by a black-haired elf who comes out of a nearby tent. Aline greets the man in return and informs the elf that they have a letter for Kirik from Fellscale. After reading the letter, the black-haired elf frightens and runs back into the tent he came from. Afterward, inside Sakea, the two finally meet Kirik. After a short conversation between him and Aline, Kirik bows to Coma, causing a brief shock between Coma and Aline. Kirik then formally greets Coma as his grandmother. Kirik explains that he is Mai's son. He overreacts and gets over-enthusiastic just like the others and offers her luxurious accommodation. She gets really annoyed by him and refuses, saying that Mai will pay for her deception. Believing that he has offended his grandmother, Coma assures Kirik that he has not. She says to him that she prefers shabby inns over his luxury rooms. As they leave the place, the two return to their inn and meet Arbiter Kennison and an elven knight accompanied by a pair of guards. They are questioned about the bandits they met at the checkpoint and are told to take the fire stick the bandits had. Since Aline is perfectly fine with this, the elven knight asks the two knights to leave. Once they do, she bows to Coma and apologizes on behalf of her younger brother and calls her grandmother. She then introduces herself as Karina, Kirik's older twin sister. Coma notices that she is able to talk to Kirik through telepathy. Karina tells her that she also learns from her mother. Mai once told her that when Coma gets angry she can crush even her relatives and make a paste out of it. It offends Coma, and despite denying the story, Arbiter and Aline believe it. Kennison then adds more fire to it by throwing a remark at her. It triggers Coma and causes her to create a giant snowball and throw it at everyone. Elsewhere, a depressed Mai informs Scargo of her children's disastrous first meeting with Coma. Scargo assures Mai that he will apologize to their mother alongside her when she returns, which Mai is relieved to hear. Later, at the Adventurers Guild, Coma learns about a tower in the lake from two adventurers and learns that it is called Crescent Moon Castle. In addition, it is currently inhabited by bandits. Why is it called the Crescent Moon Castle? Because the Crescent Moon Castle glows at night. Finally, there is a rumor of a great treasure in the castle, but the old scholars say it is in a place called the Guardian's Hall, and is feared by many. With this new information, Coma thanks the two adventurers and leaves. One of the adventurers thinks that he's seen Coma somewhere before, while the other, a woman, is called out for sounding too masculine. Outside the guild, Coma talks to Key about their current situation and decides to talk to Kirik about more information about Crescent Moon Castle. At Sakea, Coma apologizes to Kirik, but he fears Coma will tear him limb from limb and tells her that he heard it from his mother. Coma makes him deliver a morbid telepathic message to Mai. The subject of the message is Mai's choice of how she will be punished. He then changes the subject to Crescent Moon Castle, which Coma believes is a guardian tower. Kirik then tells her that all 13 towers are the blessings of the gods. Kirik notices her interest in exploring the place and tries to dissuade Coma from doing so, as it is currently inhabited by bandits. On the other hand, Coma is confident in her ability to handle everyone if necessary. She also demands that the whole incident be kept secret because the royal knights would lose face if rumors spread that the little girl had taken down a band of bandits. Coma tells him that if she doesn't wake up the tower's guardian, it will be destroyed. Kirik then informs Coma of the fort, located at the front of the lake, and that his sister Karina left to go there a few days ago, and he will ask her to allow her to pass there. Of course, this will be under the guise of delivering supplies to them, causing a funny moment between them. The younger black-haired elf lets out a sigh of relief, thankful that his great-grandmother didn't cause a scene again. That night, Coma informs the Arbiter and Aline of the situation regarding Crescent Moon Castle. They understand and are confident that he will be fine. The next day, Coma heads to the keep, and once she's out of sight of the city, she summons Veldecancer so that her chariot, and she can ride on his back. At dusk, Coma arrives at the keep and is met by Karina, who marvels at how quickly she has reached the keep, taking an average of 3 days to get there from the capital. Before their conversation can continue, a knight suddenly enters the room to inform them that 9 rock golems are attacking the fortress. Karina leaves to deal with the golem invaders while Coma wonders if she should get involved despite not wanting to draw attention to herself. Outside, the rock golems make their way into the fortress as Karina ponders the lowly, underarmed knights she has under her and how they are not enough to protect the capital. Even so, Karina is determined to protect the fortress with all her might, as are the knights who serve her. Karina and her knights open the front gate to the fortress and confront the rock golems, but their efforts prove futile against their rocky adversaries. As swords are unable to harm them, she uses her fire blade and strikes one of the golems, but all in vain. They all get scared and worried and Karina thinks about retrieving them. Coma, with her heroic entry, slowly applauds at the bravery of Karina and her knights, enters the scene, and claims to take care of the rest. Coma praises Kara's abilities, but then deftly defeats the attacking golems with her magical abilities. She uses the spell Zamzar Blade first to cut a golem into two, and then she uses the spell Zanga Boa to form huge fireballs that fly to the sky and then fall on all the golem, destroying them all in one shot. Once the golems are defeated, the wounded soldiers who got healed by Coma come from the fortress to find out what happened. Karina thanks Coma for saving everyone and then apologizes for her incompetence. On the other hand, Coma again praises Karina and advises her that using her sword as a means to cast a fireball spell is too risky for her in such battles, and it consumes too much of her magic points. As Coma looks over the horizon at sunset, she suggests Karina and her soldiers collect the golem loot and take care of her things as she heads to Crescent Moon Castle. That night in the open field, Coma ponders the levels of the golems and learns from Key that 8 of the golems were level 43, and 1 was level 172. Suspecting that there is a player in that world, Key tells Coma that the culprit is probably a demi-human, and Coma believes that the player is a seasoned player in this. In Key's opinion, they estimate the player to be level 430, which Coma hopes to meet soon. Arriving at Crescent Moon Castle the following morning, Coma quickly overpowers the gang of bandits using her summoning magic, Brown Dragons. The leader of the Love Rogue bandits then appears, and Key's assumption of the leader's level was accurate after Coma assessed the boss to find out his name and level. Also, Coma recognizes the armor and realizes that it has the ability to completely nullify magic. Both Coma and Loverogue then get into a moral debate about the game world. Seeing that she has no argument with Loverogue, who thinks that it is just a game, not a reality, and he can eliminate whoever he wishes to and upgrade his level. Coma summons her staff and switches her active abilities to fight the bandit. She first uses her magic to dig a hole in the ground where Loverogue is standing. After he falls down in it, she uses the seawater and pours it into the hole, using magic, and at the end, she uses lightning to give him an electric shock. After defeating Loverogue, who is really another Leadale player, and still a child, who takes advantage of the absence of game admins to wreak havoc at his whim. His defeat from Coma has taught him his lesson and he starts to cry. Just as Coma was about to finish Loverogue, Karina stops her by shooting an arrow, which Coma dodges. After recalling her brown dragons, she demands to know why Karina prevented her from completing the Loverogue. Karina then asks her grandmother to allow her and her knights to capture Loverouge and stand trial in Helspur. Despite Coma's objections, she allows Karina to restrain Loverouge, but places a punishment bracer on his neck to reduce his stats by 90%. Realizing that Coma is a limit breaker, Coma is glad that Loverogue understands the difference in power between them. He also warns Karina that there might be another player out there who could remove the collar she put on the bandit. In addition, Coma warns that she has no idea what items Loverogue has in her box and that they should be careful. Following Coma's advice, Karina and her knights lead the reluctant Loverogue away from the site. Coma confirms that the castle is indeed a guardian tower and heads into the castle. Inside the dilapidated castle, Coma finds a single skull with a crown placed on a throne. Coma gives the skull some of her MP, but it doesn't do anything, so he gives the throne some of her MP, which revives the guardian skeleton. Coma learns from the pompous skeletal guard that this guardian tower belonged to Opus, a fellow master of skills and her former mentor in the game. Coma doesn't like the castle and lies on the floor whining about it. The guard gives the collapsed Coma a key ring and book from the tower, explaining that her former master expected her to arrive there. Upon opening the book, Coma is surprised by what is inside. Inside the book was a familiar mute fairy that only she could see. Before her departure, Coma offers the guardian her MP whenever she needs it, to which the guardian, with her proud royal attitude as always, agrees to the offer. Afterwards, Coma returns to the place of her grandson, Sakai, and her grandchildren thank her for capturing the Loverogue. They tell Coma that they followed her advice and locked him in the deepest and most secure dungeon. Coma then receives a huge cash reward from her grandchildren, offered by the people as her reward for eliminating the bandit threat, and it is revealed that her name has not been released to preserve her anonymity. She then asks Karina where she learned the fireball sword skill, which she claims she tried to copy from another person she saw using it. Coma believes that person was probably another player, and reveals the name of the skill, and what kind of weapon is needed to use it. Karina wants to learn it from her grandmother, but she refuses, saying that Karina must pass the tower trials first to gain the skill. Karina thinks about passing the trail in the Crescent Moon Tower, but Coma forbids her to set foot in that castle because it is surrounded by dangerous creatures who can harm her. Kirik then thanks Coma for all she has done, and asks her if she wants to travel back to Felscalio, as her business with Eline is over now. Coma reveals that she can instantly teleport to Felscalio where she has them registered, but also that once they get back to Felscalio, Mai Mai is in for a big surprise. Coma is excited about watching Mai Mai's face when she will give her punishment for tricking her. Coma is riding on her wagon back to town. She rides with her son, Cardat's who repaired the bridge they are crossing that leads to the town. Cardat's informs her that he got hired to fix this bridge after the bandits around there were defeated and this pathway became safe. He also asks her whether the bandit who gets captured by Foscalo Knights was actually captured by her or not. Coma admits that she is the one behind all this and she turned in the bandit leader because she doesn't want any attention. Coma also mentions that she'll punish Mai on returning back there and that she is really impressed by Karik and Karina. Hearing this, Cardat's prays for his sister and wonders what changes the attitude of his mother towards Mai's children. In Foscalo, when they are finally back again, Arbiter and Aline pay Coma her reward money after her successful mission. Later, Coma heads to the Adventurers Guild with a little fairy sitting on her shoulder. At the guild, Coma decides on a quest, which states to attain horned bear meat to a place. Coma thinks about the weird place named Black White-Tailed Rabbit, where the quest came from. He informs her about the place that it's a restaurant that her children frequent. When she is stepping outside the guild, a knight observes her and talks to himself that she might be the same lady who ran across the river. When she comes outside, she gets approached by Lonti with a lady named Mai. She formally introduces herself, and judging by her personality, Coma guesses that she could be a princess. They ask Coma to be Mai's personal bodyguard for a while, and although Coma learns that she is a runaway princess, she still accepts their request. Afterward, Coma invites the two to go along with her during her quest which she recently accepted. Coma also suggests to them that it would make it more difficult for people to guess her whereabouts if she stays outside the town while accompanying her on her quest. At night, they reach the forest where the quest target is. Coma cooks them dinner and finds it very delicious. Lonti and Mai also enjoy a simple dinner with Coma while they are frightened by Cerberus standing behind Coma and guarding them. After she ate her fill, she tells the two about her quest. She heads out deep into the forest and leaves them under the guard of Cerberus. Moments later, an explosion is heard and felt by everyone. As soon as Mai and Lonti hear the explosion, they head out to find out about it and also search Coma. Then, they find out that Coma uses her magic to create a hot bath by using the water from the nearby lake. Coma removes her clothes to get in the water and the other follows her. While they are enjoying this privilege, Mai unintentionally spits out about her affection for Scargo, and in the response Lonti also accidentally reveals about Mai being the princess. Despite getting mad, Coma blushes and smiles at them. Mai is surprised by the boldness of Coma when she says that loving someone is a beautiful feeling and she is not against her relationship of Mai with her son. Afterward, Coma summons her white dragon. She makes a show of how tame he is to Lonti and Mai. They cuddle around the soft and warm furs of White Dragon and talk about the Night Leader, mentioning that there was a dragon that protected an ancient tower somewhere. They also tell Coma about the Night Leader who is also a Dragoid, which makes Coma think that he might also be one of the players. They then talk about Primo and how Coma can walk on water. Mai asks to learn it too, but Coma deems it impossible for someone like her. Coma tells her that if Mai wants to do it then she must complete a combat trial first. But Lonti and Mai both know that it's impossible for them to defeat Coma, and they refuse. The next morning, Coma hunts down a horned bear like a piece of cake which shocks Mai. Afterward, they plan to go back to town. Back at the Adventurers Guild, the knight is waiting for Coma to return so that he could ask her some questions. Right at that moment, Knight Leader Shining Saber arrives and gets instantly recognized by the knight as a player of the game Leadale from the Silver Moon Horseman Guild. The knight known as Coral hugs Shining Saber as old buddies and Coral tells him that after Leadale's service ended he got trapped in the game and was inside this game for 10 whole years. Shining Saber tells him that he came here 3 years ago and they both are meeting a game player other than them for the first time. Meanwhile, at the lab, Lopus tries to recreate the potion that Coma created, but fails. After being disappointed, he throws the potion in a trash pit at the back of the school. In the trash pit, there are pieces of bones that absorb the potion and cause a giant penguin-like monster to be summoned. On the way back to the town, Coma is walking happily through the green fields with beautiful flowers. The fairy plucks Coma's hair to warn her that she needs to get back faster, and Coma informs Lonti and Mai to head back quickly. Lonti seems to be worried and asks her why they need to rush back, and Coma replies that there might be trouble in the capital. She uses her summoning magic and summons a giant Thurwolf and mounts it. She tells Lonti and Mai to do the same. In the capital, the penguin-like monster destroys part of the academy by stepping on it, and then dives into the nearby river. Filled with terror, townspeople begin to flee. Shining Saber orders his 2 soldiers to help evacuate the town, while he himself decides to attack the event monster. Despite knowing the delicacy of this situation because this monster is an event monster, and it will take 200 players of level 300 to defeat this monster. Being proud to be the captain of the knights, he believes that it is his duty to fight against it even if he has no chance of winning. On the other side of town, while Cardat's and Scargo are watching the situation unfold, Mai and Lopus Harvey also approach them. Mai informs them that the students have been evacuated from the academy. Scargo then tells them that the Royal Knights are also on their duty. Lopus feels embarrassed to be the cause of this mess and apologizes for creating a ginormous that is now a huge threat to the capital. Mai decides to take action and slow him down, but Scargo forbids her sister to do so, and explains that doing so, it will draw attention to the Guardian Castle. Mai is worried about what they should do to stop the monster from further destroying the town. Shining Saber is standing on the roof of a building and Coral joins him to help him in defeating the monster. Saber tells him that he owes him for his help and promises to buy him a drink later. Wasting no further time, both Saber and Coral charge at the beast using their abilities and spells to hit the monster on its head. After striking the monster falls down and swiftly strikes them, causing them both to fall to the ground and lose their MP. Scargo clearly recognizes Saber from a distance, but not Coral, and the two land in a storage building. Despite being down to less than 20% of his maximum health and now wielding a broken spike sword, Coral still insists on helping Saber fight the monster. Standing on the roof of the building they try to land on, now without armor. While Saber and Coral are planning to face the monster once more, the giant tortoise inside its shell shows up and defeats the monster. It's a relief for Scargo and his siblings, who know that the monster is no longer a threat. But the monster again stands up and Coma casts the lightning and fire spells of the highest level and defeats the monster. Saber and Coral are surprised to see a spell of such a high level and conclude that only a player has the capability to cast such spells. The monster's body gets dissolved and from his dissolving body, a giant ore falls into the river. Later, Coma evaluates the trash pit where the monster was born and gets more information from Key about its activation items. While Saber and Coral observe that Coma is also able to see the mark showing above the pit, Coma strictly orders Mai to seal off the area and keep this area restricted to prevent another disaster. She also warns her that if it ever happens again, she would throw her into the river. Terrified of her mother, Mai vows to follow her mother's orders. Saber sees Mai and suggests to her that he should immediately escort Mai back to the castle. Coma says that if Mai submits a request at the guild the next time for a bodyguard, she will complain about her attempt to run away. Mai gets a little embarrassed, but she understands Coma's reasoning. Mai is then escorted back to the castle by Saber and his knights, and Scargo gives the orichalcum ore to Coma. When she asks about what it is, Scargo explains that this ore was dropped by the monster. Coral tells her that he and Saber don't have the level to add this item to their item box. He says that as she was the one who defeated it, she deserves it the most. However, Coma promises to give him a new sword as a gift for his bravery. He is grateful and asks her to meet him and Saber the next day for an important discussion. Coma agrees and tells him that she'll meet them at the Colosseum at noon. After dealing with all the trouble, Coma finally decides to deliver the bear meat and takes Kardats with her to the restaurant that posted the bear meat request in the Adventurers Guild. The next day, at noon in the Colosseum, Saber and Coral introduced themselves and told Coma their ranks and titles. Coma recognizes the guild they belong to as the guild her fellow skill master Kyotaro once led, and then reveals the guild she belonged to named Cream Cheese, which was made for limit breakers, stunning them both. Saber mentions that all members of this guild are authorized to be skill masters, and Saber will then recognize Coma as her in-game title, the Silver Ring Witch. Confirming this conclusion, Coma then pulls out her Arkle staff and threatens the two to never call her by that title again, or else she would crush them without warning. Under pressure, Coral speaks up for them and promises that they will never say it again. Then, Coma gives Coral the sword she promised to give, which turns out to be the Valhalla sword, the strongest sword in the game. Saber is jealous of Coral and asks Coma for one as well, but she tells him that there was only one item. Disappointed by this revelation, Saber pulls himself together and gets down to business, asking Coma to exchange information with. The two then reveal how long they've been trapped in the game, and Coma reveals how long she's been in the game, then asks why the Ledale game ended its service, noting that she passed away when the service ended. Shocked by this, the two call Coma a ghost, which Coma calls rude. They then reveal that they heard a rumor that someone passed away in real life, and then Ledale ended their service 6 months after that. She figured she would need to get more information from her fairy about the situation now that she was able to speak. As players, these two men are also able to see the fairy. Stunned by the fairy, Coma reveals to the two that she was left by another player named Opus, also known as Ledale of Conaming. The two men don't know the name, but they do recognize his game name and the torment the player has brought upon them. Later, Coma accepts friend requests from both men and asks them for information about the watchtowers. Coral negotiates with Coma, asking to exchange some skills for information about the watchtowers. Coral is interested in the recovery spell's ability. Coma agrees if the information is valuable. Coral excitedly reveals that there is a place in the Senior fishing village, and Coma believes that place belongs to Leothek. After ending the deal, Coma gives Coral the recovery ability. Saber then asks if Coma is unable to swim due to her hesitation when she heard that the place was underwater. Coma confirms this but is still confident that her magic would help her. He then goes on to talk about Leothek, and Saber realizes that they have to go back to their place in the castle, and they all then leave. Noticing her jealousy of Saber and Coral's bond, Coma is comforted by her fairy, after which Key appears to warn her that someone is coming from behind. Coma then throws a grappling hook at the person, who turns out to be Scargo. He then tells her that he is here because he heard Coma was seeing some men, and he took it upon himself to save her. As Scargo continues his tirade, Coma gets behind Scargo and equips her Arkle staff, threatening to use it. But Scargo begs for forgiveness and Coma accepts. Before Coma leaves, Scargo offers her to join him for tea sometime and she happily accepts, which cheers Scargo up and makes Coma realize that he has no idea that Mai has feelings for him. Afterwards, Coma visits Mai to inform her that she is going on another adventure to find the Dragon King's palace. She also asks Mai if she heard about the knights from Hellspur and Fellscale who will deal with the bandits. Mai confirms this and Coma reveals that she plans to go for a ride with. This prompts Mai to suggest that her mother should settle somewhere, and Coma reflects on the village she woke up in. Later, Coma visits her watchtower and hands the Golem Guard some MP, asking if he knows what happened to the world 200 years ago. He replies that he only knows what he heard from the other guards who said that their masters had said goodbye to them. Coma then leaves, promising to visit her tower occasionally. Sometime later, Coma revisits the village she woke up in and sees Lit hanging some clothes on a close line outside her mother's inn. Upon seeing Coma coming, Lit rushes towards her for a hug. Coma is excited to meet and hug Lit, who welcomes her back to the village. Morel sees Coma and is all excited to meet her. She invites her to stay at her place. On this occasion, Merrill not only offers Coma a room at his inn to spend the night, but also plans to arrange a celebration for her. Hearing about the celebration and drinking makes Coma uneasy, but she still accepts the invitation. The next morning, Coma walks out of the inn with the Lil Fairy on her shoulder, irritated by her headache and heartburn. He appears and informs that her suffering is from hangover symptoms again. After vowing again to never drink alcohol, she overhears the villagers discussing a matter concerning Lauder, who hears a strange singing coming from the village well. Coma decides to investigate and wonders if it was a quest related to the well. Although Lit is worried about her, Coma assures Lit that she will be fine and jumps into the well after casting the spell Aqua Level 2, which gives her a swimsuit and 2 fish companions. Both fish swim in the water and guide Coma through 100 meters of tunnels until they reach an underwater cave. When Coma gets there, she hears low voices coming from the cave and summons a level 7 Shy to illuminate the area. In the newly lit area, the mermaid Mamilla is found hiding behind a stalagmite, begging Coma not to eat her. When Mimely saw Cain's aquamarine fish, she calls them the guardian deities, which Coma didn't know as well. The two then introduce each other and Mimely explains the situation that caused her to end up in the cave through a magical portal from the ocean she came from. Unsure of which ocean she comes from, Mimely sings a song from her homeland in a melancholic tone. Coma discovers that her song was the reason for the voices that the villagers were hearing. Coma comforts her and promises her safety. Coma then takes her to the village and decides that Mimely will stay there for the time being until she is able to find her homeland. All the villagers are hostile towards her and offer her shelter in the local spa to keep her safe. Once Mimely is settled, Coma decides to return to the capital and says her goodbyes to Lit and the others. She also promises that Lit will fly with her one day, with her mother's permission, of course. In the capital, Shining Saber and his fellow Felskelio knights are heading to the coastal fishing village that Coral mentioned, which is currently under threat from bandits. On the way, Saber finds Coma and after a brief conversation with her, she joins their quest, and Saber insists that Coma ride his horse with him. He carries Coma in his arms and puts her on the horse just like a man behaves with his bride. Although his intention was to thank her for dealing with the monster from the event, this unnerves Coma, and when Saber realizes what he has done, he is also confused. They regrouped with the Felskelio knights and misinterpreted Saber carrying Coma on horseback as if they were in an intimate relationship. That night at camp, Coma serves the Felskelio knights a soup she has prepared and the Felskelio knights enjoy it, insisting on addressing Coma as Lady Coma. Saber also clarifies that Coma is not his girlfriend, but the fellow knights believe otherwise. This notion is confirmed when the Felskelio knights talk about Coma's child being Mai, and Scargo leads the knights to believe what kind of person Saber is. They also tease Saber about becoming the father of 3 children. Saber then apologizes to Coma for the lack of discipline from his knights. The days pass and Saber informs Coma that she will arrive at the fishing village at noon the next day. As a token of appreciation, Coma gives Saber some cooking skills so the knights of Felskelio don't have to suffer through eating bland meals. The next day, Coma feels good about having a great time with the group. She sets out separately from Saber and the knights of Felskelio. Heading to a fishing village, Coma notices that there's something weird about this place, and about how quiet it is. When she arrives at the village, Coma sees that it is covered in thick fog. Taking precautions, Coma summons a centaur, Heigl arms herself with the blade of the eternal flame, and Key strengthens her barrier. Fully prepared, the two enter the village and Coma is unable to cast a scouting spell as the thick fog prevents her from using it. Just then, Coma notices that Heigl has about a third of his HP left and alerts as a zombie knocks Heigl to the ground. Coma doesn't like zombies and gets terrified by them. Unable to continue, Heigl disappears and Kana, thinking the zombie is high level and since he was able to deal with Heigl, concludes that the zombie was created by a player. She casts the spell, Dulacane, clears the zombies, and prepares to explore the village. Armed with the Eternal Flame Blade, Kana continues to investigate the zombie village. There are zombies everywhere, and Kana manages to reach a house. She enters the house and finds it empty. While she is considering her options on how to get rid of zombies, she thinks of burning the whole village, but she also realizes that there could be survivors here as well, and therefore she can't burn it. While she considers what to do in the house, Key warns her of a close presence, and a warned Kana prepares to confront her. The presence she sensed was Qualke, who was trapped there along with his companion, Igzis, and a survivor. After they recognize each other from the guild in Hellspur, Qualke offers to bring Kana to her companion, but Kana warns her that she will blow up the village if it is a trap. Frightened by the threat, Qualke claims there is a survivor in the village. Led to the basement of the warehouse, Kana meets Igzis. Qualke begins to speak differently, noting that Kana might be a stronger player than her, and Kana is also aware of the change in her voice. Igzis then tries to attack Kana, who immediately points her sword at Igzis' neck, yelling about the nerves he has in trying to attack her. Igzis calms the tension towards him and reintroduces himself as Tartar Sauce, a player from Kana Cream Cheese's old guild who created a second account that has a stronger appearance. Qualke then introduces himself and Kana asks her if he is a guy, because of her masculine voice, to which she gets a little confused and replies that things happen. Igzis then asks how long Kana has been in the game. She replies that a few months ago, and Igzis states that he and Qualke have been trapped in the game for over 2 years. Kana then asks why they are at the Dragon King's palace site, and the players claim that they are on a guild assignment. He states that the fish are not being delivered to the market, so both Qualke and Igzis decide to investigate the village. However, once they arrived at the village, they learned that the mist that engulfed the village had turned the villagers into zombies. However, this does not affect the players, but they still had problems with the former villagers and took shelter in the basement, where they found a survivor. Igzis points to the survivor, a little girl named Luca, who was resting on a mat while the Lil Fairy appears and shocks the two players. Kana introduces the astonished players to the Lil Fairy, explaining that Opus gave it to her. Hearing the name infuriates Igzis. Kana and Igzis both call Opus a stupid player who always causes disturbances. Qualk becomes confused about who they are talking about. Igzis and Kana explain to Qualk who Opus was to them. Not wanting Luca to turn into a zombie, Kana discovers that the source of the problem is a monster, and the three decide to exterminate it. Igzis is worried about Luca and he says that they can't leave her alone like this. Hearing this, Kana comes up with a plan and summons 2 ringing bells of pink and blue color. The ringing bells surprise Igzis, and upon Qualk's investigation, he explains that upon playing the game for 1,000 hours, you get 1 ring, but she has 2, which means that she plays this game for 2,000 hours. Ringing one of the bells at Igzis' suggestion, she rings the one that summons Roxilius. Roxilius appears in front of the group through a magical door, leaving them both astonished, and introduces herself to the group. After a short conversation, Kana assigned Roxilius to guard Luca. After being done with Luca's protection, Kana summons Key to search for quests related to keywords, the village, the fog, and zombies. Key manages to get a hit, and Kana learns that for this task one must defeat a zombie pirate captain named Terror Skeleton, stationed on the ghost ship. Armed with her staff, Kana sets out to defeat the boss and save the village. Outside the basement, while these three are talking about their scheme, Kana suggests that they should set the pirate boss and the ghost ship on fire. Igzis asks her why she doesn't hold back. Kana replies that it's better to destroy them rather than let them affect other villages as well. Qualk points towards a monstrous and huge ship full of zombie pirates. Kana tells the two that they need to defeat the ghost captain at the core of the ship, otherwise, the ghost captain will continue to use the souls of the villagers, who turned into zombies, as fuel to infinitely revive. Igzis understands that if they don't fight them now, then it will turn into a never-ending battle in future. He claims to deal with the boss while Kana and Qualke have to deal with the skeleton crew. They immediately attack the boat in a heroic way. When Kana and Qualk are destroying the crew with their excellent moves, Igzis draws his blade toward the ghost captain and cuts him into 2 halves with a single stroke. As soon as the captain is defeated, the other crew starts to fall down and a sunny bright light starts to appear on the ship. Ghost ship disappears and the sky becomes clear again with different animals and species starting to fly in the sky. They all save the village, and while standing at the shore of the sea they are worried about the fishing village. Kana says that no one would want to trade in a city that got destroyed for some reason, but the kingdom will take care of this issue. Kana then misses Heigl and says that she has finally avenged him. Igzis asks about Heigl and Kana tells him that he was a centaur level 250, to which Igzis comforts her by saying that she will be able to summon him again after a few days. Kana then asks about Luca, and Igzis tells her that she might want to stay in this village. Qualk thinks it's too dangerous to leave her alone like this. That night, in the village, Kana is looking closely at a bangle Luca is holding in her arms, who is sleeping on her lap by the campfire with her companions and Roxilius around her. Luca wakes up afraid and reserved and gets some tea from Roxilius. Igzis asks Luca where she wants to stay as Coma offers to adopt her, to which Luca hugs Coma and seemingly silently agrees. Coma comforts her in her arms and promises her to be a family. The next day, Coma travels to the watchtower she was looking for, the palace of the Dragon King. With the help of her blue dragon, she puts Roxilius on guard for protecting Luca without passing away until she returns. She sits on her dragon's back and enters deep into the ocean. Near the destination, Coma has the blue dragon search for the mermaid village and enter the guardian tower. After entering the tower, she sees a big flower with enclosed petals in the water. Coma gives her MP to it and the guardian, a giant pink frog, endows the core of the tower, scares Coma, and after talking to her, accepts her as her new master and gives her the guardian ring. When Coma goes back outside to where her blue dragon is, she finds that the mermaid village is nowhere to be found. On the surface, Coma accepts friend requests from both Qualk and Igzis and sends them back to Helspur. Coma then promises to show Luca her base village, where she will introduce her to Lit. Standing in front of the mirror, Luca checks out her new dress from Coma, and while observing herself in the mirror, Roxilius praises her and calls her Miss. Luca is not used to being called Miss, but as Coma's kid, Roxilius calls her that out of respect. Coma offers to take Luca to meet her other new siblings and also offers her gratitude to all those who have helped her. At Felscalo, Coma gives Luca a grand tour of the place and shows her all the shops, the Adventurers Guild, and the castle. Then, she takes a boat to take her across the lake to reach the castle. Little Luca is astonished by her surroundings. Later, Coma takes her to see one of her new siblings, Mai, who was with Lonti in her office. They are initially shocked to learn this, but Mai recovers and asks Luca to call her big sister Mai from now on. Luca does, and Mai is charmed by this fact, and is then introduced to Roxilius, who Loni offers some tea to, but he refuses, making her blush. Mai then recounts the remarkable deeds Coma has accomplished so far, which makes her think that she could be a cautionary tale for other people. Coma reveals her plans to build a house near her guardian tower in the village. Mai asks Coma to build her residence in the city, but Coma refuses, because she wants Luca to grow in a healthy environment surrounded by greenery. In addition, she doesn't want Scargo to meet them every day as well. Coma then asks Mai to contact Cardats to prepare lots of wood for her new house, and Scargo as well. Mai agrees. Meeting Scargo in his office, Scargo gives an exaggerated greeting that infuriates Coma, and Scargo immediately realizes his mistake and quickly apologizes. Coma then formally introduces Luca to Scargo, and they then enjoy cookies together as Coma informs Scargo of her plans to build a house by her tower. Scargo asks her if he should shift his church near her house, to which Coma reacts straightforward and denies his request. Later, the group meets up with Cardats, who has prepared all the wood more than Coma needs, and Coma takes all the wood he gave her. Coma pats Cardats' head, making him blush while he pats Luca's head and finds her very adorable. They then meet up with Aline, Arbiter, and Kennison, who learn of Coma's moving situation. They both say that they would love to have Coma with them, but as she has her own plans, they can't do anything about it, and Aline offers Coma everything she needs from his store. At dusk, Luca gets tired, sleeping in Coma's arms. Coma hands her over to Roxilius, and he takes her back to the inn while Coma goes to visit Aline's shop to buy some things. On reaching the shop, Coma notices that the exterior of the shop has a giant beautified image of Aline, while inside Coma is greeted by a kobold employee who looks just like Aline. Coma asks her about her stock and she explains everything they have, from household goods to swords and adventuring supplies. She was shown by the employee the wagons they have for purchase. In the yard where the cars were, Coma is shown what they have for sale. She shows her an old cart destined for disposal, and Coma recalls the incident with the monster with this car. The employee recognizes her after she recalled the incident, and apologizes for the rudeness of not recognizing her, and offers her the cart for free. The employee claims it was an order from Aline, who said Coma's first purchase there would be free. Coma feels uncomfortable about Aline being this generous towards her, so the employee clears everything and introduces herself as Aline's wife, Armuna. The news shocks Coma. She apologizes and tells her that she didn't know that Aline is married. Armuna tells her how much her husband regards her, and Coma shows her gratitude, and tells her that the next time she would come to buy some regular things. After placing her newly acquired cart in inventory, Coma is escorted out by all of the store's employees and returns to the inn where she was staying as darkness falls. In her room, Coma tells Luke her plans for what he will need her to do when the house is built. It is decided that Roxilius will manage the house in Coma's absence, and despite his misgivings about the person, he suggests that Coma call Roxine. Coma thinks this is a good idea and calls Roxine, who is informed of the situation. Roxilius and Roxine continue to fight with each other. Coma intervenes and teaches them a lesson about not fighting anymore and not having a bad influence on Luca. They both obediently understand. The next day, Coma merges her cart with a magical woody horse, summoned from her item box, and she rides with the group at their new chariot to a distant village. In the village, Morel and Lit meet Coma and the others. Lit introduces herself to Luca. Lit tries to be friends with Luca and is excited to have her in their village. Once the introductions are over, the group meets Mimely at the spa, who sings and uses her magic to do laundry. Lit apparently suggested that Mimely start a laundry business, and it was a huge success. Mimely is also happy to earn her living as well as making everyone happy by doing laundry for everyone. Morel then announces that there will be a celebration in honor of Coma becoming an official resident of the village. This makes Coma worried, because she would have to drink again and would face a hangover once again, and tries to refuse to celebrate, but Morel insists, saying that it's a custom, leaving Coma no choice other than accepting it. Scargo and his siblings meet in Scargo's office to discuss how their mother settled in the remote village. Scargo expresses his opinion that they should all move to the same village as their mother, and is immediately shot down by his younger siblings. Mai says that Scargo is the head priest, so he shouldn't be thinking about it, otherwise their mother will beat him up. Meanwhile, in the village, Coma was suffering from another hangover and Luca handed her some water. While Coma talks to Luca, who almost calls her mother but stops in the middle to talk about her alcoholic breath. Roxilius and Roxine argue about how Roxilius did not pay enough attention to their master and stopped her from drinking. Roxine starts to roast Roxilius for not being able to stop her, and they start a fight. Just as Coma stops them from arguing, Lit arrives and describes the big news from his mother. Outside, Coma is shown a large plot of land that has been chosen just for her. The space is said to have once belonged to the person who founded the village. Morel informs Coma of another banquet in celebration of Coma owning this land. Coma is shocked and tells them that it's mid and noon, to which Morel replies that it's considered good fortune to have a banquet at noon. Another party is held to commemorate the event, and Sai is ordered by Rox to keep an eye on Coma, who suffers another hangover the next day. On seeing Coma in this condition, Roxilius scolds Roxine for laughing at him just to be embarrassed later. Luca again serves Coma a glass of water and complains of the smell of alcohol from her mouth. After reliving what happened that day, Coma returns to the property and uses her crafting and magical skills to build her new home, using the wood Cardets gave her. Once the house is finished, they step into the house together with a count of 3. Coma sends both Roxilius and Roxine to go search around the house and look for any gap or mistake. Meanwhile, Coma shows Luca around it, starting with Sai's pink room, followed by Rox's blue room. The tour ends in Luke's room, just on the right to Coma's room, and Coma assures her that if there's any problem, she can visit anytime. Both Sai and Rox are back again to report to her that the whole house is flawless and they found no mistake in it. They both then start arguing with each other again, but Luca steps in and kindly asks that they not fight, leaving both servants confused. For his brave act, Coma appoints Luca as Minister of Arbitration and asks her to stop them from fighting every time they start arguing, and Luca accepts. The villagers then visit Coma's house to help her, but are in complete disbelief that her house was built so quickly. However, they decorate the house with flowers that follow the village tradition. To mark the occasion, and to Coma's dismay, another party is held. That night, Coma takes a bath at the spa and relaxes in the pool. Meanwhile, Luca feels shy when Roxine helps her in taking bath. Coma talks to Mimely and they talk a bit about the aftermath of the party, and then the laundry that Mimely is doing. Mimely asks Coma if she found the other mermaids, to which Coma offers her apologies that she couldn't find any mermaid village. The topic then changes to Mimely, who decides that Coma shouldn't be looking for her village anymore, as she is more attuned to the current village than her old one. She tells Coma all about her past. When she was in the mermaid village, she wasn't wanted there and everyone used to speak ill about her. She even wishes to escape from that place, and that day she got into a trap and found herself under a well. Mimely tells her that she is more welcome here and everyone accepts her and likes her. Coma understands Mimely's request and leaves it open to just tell her if she decides to go back there. Coma's hangover is gone and she is amused to see Luca being shy while taking a bath. The next day, Luca and Lit learn to read and write. Coma cheers the kids that they are doing great in their studies and now they can also move to read tougher books. Coma then sends them to go and play. Lit asks Luca to go with her and she will teach her how to make flower crowns. Luca follows her. When it's over, Sai makes a remark about how Coma's tutoring of children is the ultimate charity, to which Coma replies that there is no upper and lower hierarchy between her and the villagers and forbids her to say such things in front of the villagers. Later, outside, Coma sits at a table and is served tea by Sai, who suggests that her master rests for a while. The conversation then turns to how Sai and Rox didn't patch each other. Coma then claims that the only place she was allowed to run around freely was the world of Leadale, because she was hospitalized most of her life. She continues to reflect on her interactions with Lit and Morel when she arrived in this world, and even though she never even dated anyone, but she has children here, recalling her interaction with her children and grandchildren and her encounters with everyone else she meets in the country, including Arbiter, Aline, Qualok, Xyz, Shining Saber, the Knight, and Princess. In the end, she talks about her newly adopted daughter, Luca, who she finds the most adorable. She feels comfort and peace while thinking about everything and feels thankful for her life and journey so far. While she is lost in her thoughts, Luca then approaches Coma and gives her a flower ring, and after hesitating many times, she finally calls her mom. Hearing this word, Koma's eyes fill with tears of joy and she hugs her and thanks her. Coma suddenly remembers the promise she made to Lit for taking her into the sky. Afterward, she takes Luca and Lit on a trip to the heights, riding an earth spirit pulled by 2 griffins. She takes them high in the sky. Little terrified Luca, closing her eyes and tightly holding onto Coma, tells her that she is afraid. Coma comforts her by saying that her mother won't let anything happen to her, trusting her words. Luca opens her eyes and gets astonished by the beauty of the view of the whole village she sees from above. Lit also enjoys the scenery and feels amazed by everything. Coma tells them that life is amazing, they can go wherever they want in this world, and that they should have fun and do all the things that give them joy.